立法會主席。
President. Questions. Question number one, Ms. Alice Mak. President, in 2005, the Hong Kong Housing Authority, or HA, divested certain retail and car park facilities of its public housing estates to the Link Real Estate Investment Trust, the Link Management Limited, or the Link, which manages the investment trust, sold the shopping centres and car parks of 9 housing estates, or otherwise known as resold facilities this year. Some shop tenants and residents of these housing estates have relayed to me their concern that the new owners may raise parking fees and shopping rentals significantly, leading to increased commodity prices, and the quality of managing the resold facilities may deteriorate. Meanwhile, the housing ordinance provides the HA shall secure the provision of ancillary facilities fit for public rental housing estates, including amenities in commercial retail facilities. Will government inform this council, A, whether it knows if the Link had informed various shareholders of the housing estates concerned prior to the sale of relevant facilities, whether after the learning of the Link's intention to sell the facilities, the authorities have implemented measures such as assessing the impact of resale, as well as on the shop tenants and residents of the housing estates, providing consultation and support services to the OCs and residents concerned if they have of the details, if not, why not. 2, whether the authorities have approached the new owners of the resold facilities and explained to them the service targets of such facilities. Priority should be given to addressing the needs of residents if they have of the responses of the new owners. If not, how the authorities ensure the new owners will continue to show their responsibilities. 3, as some residents have relayed to me their concerns that the new owners may transform the shopping arcades into ones that serve tourists and residents outside their estates, or they may even refuse to show that the maintenance responsibilities, how the authorities will prevent such situations from happening with a view to ensuring the continuous provision of such facilities. STH. President, my consolidated data reply to Ms. Mak's question is as follows. The government has explained to the LegCo on various occasions the background and objectives of the divestment of retail and car park facilities by the Housing Authority in 2005, as well as the mechanism to regulate the uses of the relevant facilities, including the STH's comprehensive response to the motion debate relating to the link read in November 2012 on whether the government should buy back the link, and our discussion with the LegCo panel on housing on relevant issues in June 2014. In July 2005, the Court of Final Appeal affirmed that the divestment of retail and car parking facilities by the Housing Authority was consistent with the HA's objective, as laid down in Section 4.1 of the Housing Ordinance. It was pointed out that to secure the provision of retail and car parking facilities did not mean that the Housing Authority needed to be the direct provider, but the HA secured the provision of such facilities so long as such facilities were available, even though they were not provided by the HA but by a third party. In reaching its conclusion, CFA noted that the link would adopt a market-oriented commercial approach in operating the relevant retail and car parking facilities, whereas the HA's approach at that time might not always be in line with private sector practice. And after the listing of the link, there might be changes in relation to the operation of the relevant facilities, including the tenant-trade mix. The link is a private enterprise so long as its operations comply with prevailing legislation, conditions of government leases, commonly known as land leases, and terms of covenants made between the link and the HA. The government and the HA cannot and will not interfere with the day-to-day operation and commercial decisions of the link, including its disposal or acquisition of properties. The link is not obliged to inform the government nor the Housing Authority before disposing of its properties. However, the link and the new owners of the relevant facilities are obliged to comply with the relevant legislation and the condition of land leases, just like any other private property owners. The assignment deeds between the HA and the link also contain certain restrictive covenants. All these ensure that changes in the management or control of the facilities divested by the HA will not affect commercial, car parking, educational, social welfare, and recreational uses of such facilities. Firstly, the land leases have stipulated the land uses of the relevant lots. If an owner wishes to change the land uses, prior agreement from other owners of the lots, including the HA and flat owners, and approval of the Lands Department have to be obtained. The conditions of land leases vary from case to case. Generally speaking, there are lease conditions that clearly stipulate that car parking spaces are restricted to the parking of vehicles by the residents and visitors of the lot concerned, and some land leases may require spaces to be provided for the parking of vehicles by residents and visitors of other specified lots, unlike public car parks. The assignment deeds between the HA and the link also contain certain restrictive covenants, which stipulate that if the link and any future owners dispose of the retail and car parking facilities, the subsequent owners shall also comply with the relevant restrictive covenants. These restrictive covenants stipulated that the commercial and car parking facilities shall not be disposed of except as a whole. If the HA still holds a proprietary interest in the relevant estate or court, the restriction that the shopping centre shall not be disposed of except as a whole will still be effective. If the HA holds all commercial or residential units in the relevant estate or court, the restriction that the car parking facilities shall not be disposed of except as a whole will still be effective. The covenants also require that the link and the new owners to continue to let out certain commercial units to non-profit-making organizations nominated by the Education Bureau and the Social Welfare Department at concessionary rent for operating social welfare and educational facilities. As regards the management and maintenance of the common area and the recreational facilities, the DMC set out provisions to ensure relevant owners to discharge their responsibilities. For instance, regarding the recreational facilities, the owner shall open such recreational facilities for use by residents of the relevant estate and courts and properly manage and maintain such facilities. By virtue of the provisions of the DMC managers may require the link and the new owners to comply with the DMC. The HA divested 180 properties in 2005. The actual circumstances vary from properties to properties, and HA has been communicating with the link depending on the circumstances. For example, if the HA holds any interest in land as a co-owner, the HA will consider the suggestions to amend the land leases by the owners, including the link. When the HA acts as the DMC manager, the HA will require the owners, including the link, to observe the provisions of the DMCs. For those properties which are subject to welfare letting covenants, the HD will coordinate with the Education Bureau and the Social Welfare Department to handle the matters relating to the letting. Should other owners be found to violate any of the requirements, the HD will follow up on the case and take appropriate action. With reference to the relevant legal documents and the established mechanism, and depending on actual circumstances, the HD will take action to ensure proper execution of the legal documents. Objectively, the commercial facilities of the link are located in public housing estates. The clientele and target customers are mainly public housing residents. When deciding on the market positioning, the owners will have to consider the preference and needs of the major target customers. At the same time, shopping habits vary from person to person and will change over time. Owners and commercial tenants have to respond to market signals appropriately and adjust their modes of operation to keep pace with the times in order to succeed in their businesses. Thank you. Ms. Alice Mak. President, in his reply, the Secretary said that if the HA owns the properties, then the parking facilities cannot be disposed of as a whole. But in a lot of the car parking facilities have been disposed of in the public housing estates. Does it mean that this covenant doesn't apply now? And the link can dispose of the car parking facilities for use by people outside the housing estates, or the car parking facilities can be speculated on. Secretary, if the shopping malls are located in the housing estates and the HA has the proprietary interest, then the car parking facilities cannot be disposed of except as a whole. If the HA has the ownership in the housing estates, again, there can be no disposal except as a whole, unless there are housing units that have been sold, and in that case it will be different. Ms. Mak. President, I think you heard my question. Now, for these rental housing estates, there are people who purchased the housing units under the TPS, the tenant purchase scheme. There are owners who are selling their car parking facilities. President, for the tenant purchase scheme units, not all of the units are under the ownership of the housing authority, and the car parking facilities can be divested. Ms. Chen Yunhan, I think it is really absurd on the part of the government when you sold the units to the link. It was stipulated that the services should be maintained. You may say that this may be a different situation after the court verdict. Does it mean that the link can dispose of the parking facilities and everything else? Do you have an alarm bell in your head? And are you allowing the situation to go on without a restriction? If you're done with the question, please be seated. I think you have put your question. So how soon are you going to draw back from the brink? And Ms. Chan, you put your question already. Please take a seat. Secretary, please respond to Ms. Chan's question. President, in my principal reply, I refer to the CFA's ruling regarding the relationship between the HA and the link. As long as they fulfill the objective under the HA Housing Authority Ordinance, the HA doesn't have to provide the service directly. And the fact that the provision is made by the link is in line with the legislation. As regards the mode of operation of the link, they will have to regard to the target clients. Ms. Chen, now I said that this is absurd because this is flying in the face of the original intention. Ms. Chen, you say the government is absurd, but this is not a question. Well, my question is, it is absurd because this is flying in the face of the original undertaking. This is not a question. Please put your question. Now, the alarm bell is ringing, and they are divesting the facilities. Well, I'm not with you. I don't think I get your question. Please repeat your question. Your question is, my question is, that the alarm bell is ringing. How soon are you going to invoke your power to buy back the link? I'm with you now. You never mentioned buying back the link. I did, President. President, please. President. As I said in the principal reply, the link may be a private enterprise. Its service and the scope of service is really targeting at the housing estate residents. The link has its own commercial strategies in the provision of service. Ms. Chen Yunhan mentioned the buyback option. I think the STH explained on many occasions before whether the buyback option will be the answer to members' concerns. We said that this may not be possible and this may not be in line with public interest and the use of public money. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, President, we absolutely objected to the divestment of government properties to a private enterprise. Now today we are witnessing this disposal of public facilities to the detriment of the residents. Even for the TPS units, there are still rental units in the vicinity. The Secretary said that the TPS facilities can be divested or disposed of, but this is to the detriment of the rental housing. I think we regret that the government doesn't buy back the link properties. Now here lies the problem, and this leads to my question. In a lot of the housing, the shopping malls and the car parking facilities under the link, they own the open space, and the open space, a lot of it has fallen into a state of disrepair. According to the government, they have to fulfill the land lease conditions. But who's going to execute the land lease conditions? Who is monitoring the link? If the link fails to do anything about the situation, who will? So my question for the Undersecretary, how are you going to solve all these problems? Undersecretary? President, Mr. Leung mentioned the public open space and the supervision and monitoring and so on. That the DMC manager has been given the authority under the DMC to manage the open space and implement the DMC provisions and make sure that the owners comply with the DMC. Under the DMC conditions, the owners have to open up the open space to the housing estate residents, and they have to maintain these facilities. The managers can inspect the facilities on a regular basis if they need repair and maintenance, and if they're not open up for use, then the manager can follow up by issuing letters to them or take action to execute the DMC conditions. As DMC managers of some of the facilities, the HA will discharge its duty for the HOS estates. The management company should reflect the problems to the new owners or the link. Mr. Leung, the Undersecretary failed to answer my question. And my question is, now there are situations where nobody is managing the open space, which has fallen into disrepair, and it is open for the public use. Now you just read out the line to take, but you haven't really answered my question. Mr. Leung, please take a seat. Undersecretary, you got a question? Any supplement? President, the managers that I mentioned can certainly take action, and they have already done that. Mr. Leung, well, you haven't answered my question. You said some have been addressed, but I think this Undersecretary has answered your question. Mr. Leung, if you're not happy with the reply, well, obviously I am not happy with the reply. I think the Undersecretary has answered your question. Please leave some time for other members. Mr. Ben Chen, President, the HA does have the responsibility to provide the shopping, the retail facilities. They may not be run by them, but they have to make sure that the prices are kept at a reasonable level. The link is disposing of some of the facilities. Does the Housing Authority have any power to stop that from happening? If it doesn't, then how can you make sure that the prices will be kept at an affordable level? Undersecretary, President, in my principal reply, I have already said or mentioned under what circumstances the link can dispose of the facilities. After the disposal, they can run the business in a commercial manner. But if there are any changes to the land leases or the land use, they have to obtain the approval of the relevant parties. Like the change of land use, they have to obtain the approval of the owners as well as the lands department. If there are any changes to the covenant, then they have to seek the approval of the relevant parties. Like for educational use, they have to make sure that the Education Bureau will be involved. Social welfare uses will be subject to the Social Welfare Department's monitoring. And all these would have to measure up to the standard laid down by the Housing Authority. So there are stipulations regarding the mode of operation. Question and answer? Well, my question remains unanswered. My question is very clear. The link is disposing of some of the facilities. Does the government have the power to stop it? If not, how can the government make sure that the prices will be kept at an affordable level? Undersecretary? President, I think I have explained this in my reply, that if they dispose of the properties, basically there are two main types. For the shopping malls, If the government still has the proprietary interest, then they have to seek the approval, the consent of the government. For car parking facilities, if the government owns all the residential units, then they cannot dispose of them as a whole. But if the government has sold off some of the units, then they can do so, as long as they do not flout all these conditions, that they can dispose of the facilities. As to whether the rent or the commodity prices can be kept at a certain level, I think we have to leave it to the market forces. We spent 22 minutes on this question. Question number 2.
Question number 2, Ms. Emily Lau. Mr. President, according to Article 25B of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, citizens shall have the right and the opportunity, without unreasonable restrictions, to vote and to be elected at elections. On the other hand, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, or the NPCSC, made a decision on the 31st of August this year on issues such as the selection of the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region by universal suffrage, or the so-called NPCSC decision. The United Nations Human Rights Committee, or the UNHCR, convened a meeting in Geneva on the 23rd of last month to consider matters relating to the implementation of universal suffrage for the selection of Chief Executive in the Hong Kong SAR in accordance with ICCPR. It has been reported that UNHRC was of the view that Hong Kong should take all necessary measures to implement the rights of universal suffrage in conformity with ICCPR, and that Hong Kong's performance in following UNHRC's recommendations was not satisfactory. In this connection, will the executive authorities inform this Council, 1, whether they have assessed if the selection of CE by universal suffrage in 2017, conducted under the framework of the NPCSC decision, will comply with the requirement of UNHRC? If the assessment outcome is in the negative, how the authorities will deal with the issue, including how and when they will give a reply to UNHRC, whether the authorities will formulate a universal suffrage system for the selection of CE in 2017 in compliance with the requirement of UNHRC, so as to ensure that Hong Kong people will enjoy the equal right to vote and to stand for election without unreasonable restrictions, if they will, of the details, if not the reasons for that. 2, whether they have assessed if the government has an obligation to ensure that the method for selecting CE by universal suffrage in 2017 complies with the relevant requirements of ICCPR. If the assessment outcome is in the affirmative, how the authorities will honor such obligation if the assessment outcome is in the negative of the justifications. And 3, as officials of both the central government and the Hong Kong SAR government have said that Hong Kong shall follow the basic law and the NPCSC decision, but not ICCPR, in implementing universal suffrage, and that the government of the United Kingdom made a reservation, and that the government of the UN and the government of the UK made a reservation not to apply Article 25(6) when it extended ICCPR to Hong Kong. What justifications apart from that reservation the authority have in support of the statement that the universal suffrage system in Hong Kong is not regulated by ICCPR? Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. Mr. President, the third report of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, or the HKSAR, in the light of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the Covenant third report, was submitted to the United Nations in 2011 as requested by the UNHRC. Upon the issue of the concluding observations of the UNHCR on the third report in March 2013, the Hong Kong SAR government submitted a follow-up response to the UNHRC in March this year as requested by the UNHRC, and provided further updated information to the UNHRC in light of a UNHRC hearing or meeting in October this year. The government is aware that the UNHRC has discussed at its meeting on the 23rd of October the implementation of the covenant in the Hong Kong SAR. However, the Hong Kong SAR government has not yet received any official notification from the UNHRC, and hence it is inappropriate to give any specific comment at this stage. We will consider whether it is necessary to make further response upon receipt of the relevant notification from the UNHRC. Our reply to the questions raised by the Honourable Emily Lau is as follows. 1. And 2. The constitutional basis of the political structure of the Hong Kong SAR lies in the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, or the Constitution and the Basic Law. The Hong Kong SAR was established by the decision of the National People's Congress made pursuant to Article 31 and Article 62(13) of the Constitution. The systems to be implemented in the Hong Kong SAR, including the political structure of the Hong Kong SAR, are prescribed in accordance with the Constitution and the Basic Law. According to Article 15 of the Basic Law, the Central People's Government shall appoint the Chief Executive and the principal officials of the executive authorities of the Hong Kong SAR in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 4 of this law. According to Article 25 of the Basic Law, all Hong Kong residents shall be equal before the law. According to Article 26 of the Basic Law, permanent residents of the Hong Kong SAR shall have the right to vote and the right to stand for election in accordance with law. According to Article 45 of the Basic Law, the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region shall be elected by election or through consultations held locally and be appointed by the Central People's Government. The method for selecting the Chief Executive shall be specified in the light of the actual situation in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress. The ultimate aim is the selection of the Chief Executive by universal suffrage upon nomination by a broadly representative nominating committee in accordance with democratic procedures. The specific method for selecting the Chief Executive is described in Annex 1, Method for the Selection of the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong SAR. On August 31st, 2014, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, or NPCSC, adopted the decision of the Standing Committee of the NPC on issues relating to the selection of the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong SAR by universal suffrage and on the method for forming the Legislative Council of the Hong Kong SAR in the year 2016, or the decision formally determining that universal suffrage for the Chief Executive election through one person, one vote could be implemented starting from 2017. It also sets out a clear framework on a specific method for selecting the Chief Executive by universal suffrage. In exploring the specific method for selecting the Chief Executive by universal suffrage, the Basic Law and the relevant interpretation and decisions of the NPCSC must be strictly adhered to, and it must be in accordance with one country, two systems and the basic policies of the state regarding Hong Kong. As regards how to devise a specific model for implementing universal suffrage, the design of political systems in different parts of the world is different. This is because the electoral system of each country or place must be devised having regard to her own history, constitutional system and actual situations. The United Nations also recognizes that internationally there is no prescribed electoral system considered to be the only one that conforms with the principles of the Covenant. As mentioned above, the decision of the NPCSC, adopted on the 31st of August 2014, sets out a clear framework on a method for selecting the Chief Executive by universal suffrage. When universal suffrage for the CE election is implemented, all eligible voters in Hong Kong would have the right to vote on the one person, one vote basis, and the right to vote is universal and equal. Furthermore, any interested person who meets the requirements in Article 44 of the Basic Law and the relevant statutory qualifications would enjoy an equal opportunity to contend for nomination by the nominating committee. Persons nominated by the nominating committee would participate in an open election on an equal footing, seek support from 5 million eligible voters, and enjoy an equal right to be elected. As regards the Covenant, when the Covenant was applied to Hong Kong in 1976, a reservation was made by the British government reserving the right not to apply Article 25B. After the establishment of the Hong Kong SAR in accordance with the Central People's Government's notification to the United Nations Secretary General in June 1996 and Article 39 of the Basic Law, only the provisions as applied to Hong Kong should remain in force, and their implementation has to be through the laws of the Hong Kong SAR. Hence, the basis for the ultimate aim of universal suffrage for Hong Kong's constitutional development lies in the Basic Law and the relevant interpretation and decisions of the NPCSC, but not the Covenant. Ms. Emily Lau. President, in paragraph 3 of the main reply, the Undersecretary referred to the application of the Covenant with regard to Article 25B when the UK government applied it to Hong Kong, and at the meeting held by the UNHRC on the 23rd of last month. It also mentioned is about universal suffrage for the Executive and Legislative Council. It has nothing to do with the CE election. And also, the committee for years has been urging the administration to act in accordance with the Covenant in implementing universal suffrage in Hong Kong. That's why I'd like to ask the administration, have you provided any information to the United Nations saying that for the CE election there is also a reservation clause in place, or is it just your own decision? Because once you apply the Covenant to Hong Kong, you will have to act in accordance with the Covenant. How can you just do it at wish? Undersecretary. Mr. President, every time at the meeting of the UNHRC, when SAR government officials attended, we would always report to the committee the situation in Hong Kong. And the situation is, when in implementing universal suffrage in Hong Kong, other than what the honourable member just said, there are certain articles under the Covenant providing guidelines as to how universal suffrage is to be implemented. The most important thing is, under the Covenant, there is a very important part which guides every country, so that every country will have to look at its own culture, history, and constitutional setup in determining the selection method or election method for the country. Indeed, under Article 2 of the Convention, it says that it will have to act in accordance with the circumstances of the country to adopt such legislative or other measures as may be necessary to give effect to the rights recognized in the present Covenant. In other words, as far as the Hong Kong SAR is concerned, we already have the Basic Law which provides for the selection of the Chief Executive by universal suffrage, and that's under Article 45 of the Basic Law. And in fact, universal suffrage has been decided by the NPCSC on the 31st of August. So that's the method that has been decided. So long as we have taken the first and second step, and what we are facing today is step 3 of the constitutional procedure. That's why we have to conduct a second round of consultation, and if we are able to get 2/3 majority of all members of this council to support this, then we will be able to complete the 3rd step, and then we can move ahead to the 4th step. So that's the selection of the Chief Executive by one man, one vote, and then we'll be able to implement that in 2017. So with regard to universal suffrage, that will have to rely on the constitution of the PRC and also the Basic Law of the Hong Kong SAR. We hope that we can press ahead with that, and we hope that members will participate actively in the process. He hasn't answered my question. That is, has the administration or the Beijing authorities provided any papers to the UN? That is, with regard to the CE election in Hong Kong, is not going to comply or abide by the UN with the Covenant. So have you done the same as the UK did in 1976 with regard to right of assembly, freedom of expression, and so on? You just ignore them. So what's the point of implementing the Covenant here if you're not going to comply with it? Undersecretary, well, we have indicated that the reservation continues to apply, but then the most important thing is we have to comply with the Basic Law and the NPCSC decision, and also local legislation in implementing one man, one vote for the selection of the Chief Executive. Mr. Raymond Chen. Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, Hong Kong has acceded to the Covenant, but then you just ignore it. The UNHRC has said that Hong Kong should take all necessary measures to implement the relevant provisions under the Covenant in implementing universal suffrage, and the administration said that up till now, it has not received any official notification from the UNHCR. So you will have to admit it whether you like it or not. So the thing is that the SAR government is aware of the fact that it has not complied with the covenant. That's why you're trying to avoid the issue. I think Ms. Emily Lau's question is very clear. All right, she asked, does the administration have the duty to ensure that the ICCPR is implemented with regard to universal suffrage for the chief executive in 2017. When I read the reply from the administration, there is no mention of the word duty. So do you have the duty to implement it? You will have to answer the question. You may say that with regard to Hong Kong's electoral system, you do not have to comply with the covenant so long as you can follow the decision by the NPCSC and the basic law is okay. So all you need to say is that. So what is your question? What do you need the Secretary to answer? All right, the UNHRC says that Hong Kong should take all necessary measures to implement universal suffrage as in line with the covenant. So I'd like to know, is it that the administration does not have the duty to do it? Secretary. President, the SAR government has been acting in accordance with the principles and the letter of the Basic Law in implementing universal suffrage. With regard to the duty as referred to by Mr. Raymond Chan, well, I've already quoted Article 2 of the Covenant. With regard to our duty, we have to act in accordance with the constitutional processes and the provisions of the present covenant to adopt measures in order to give effect to the rights recognized by the covenant. And if you look at the 5 steps procedure under the Basic Law, all parties have the duty to coordinate among themselves to press ahead with the process, including the NPCSC and also the SAR government and also the legislature, including all members of this council. We all have a duty to take up the responsibility in enabling all 5 million eligible voters to elect the chief executive by universal suffrage. And therefore, the legislature also has this responsibility, and we hope to work hand in hand together to implement this. I'm not asking whether or not he has complied with the NPCSC decision. I was asking whether or not they had discharged the duty under the covenant. Secretary, I think I've already answered the question, Mr. President. Ms. Sito, with regard to the composition of the nominating committee and the powers given to the nominating committee members, obviously that's in breach of Article 25 of the Basic Law. That is, every citizen should be equal before the law. In other words, we do not have equal rights in nominating the candidates. And according to the NPCSC decision, the nominating power would be the privilege of those members of the nominating committee. So it's almost like the rigging process of tendering in repairing and maintaining buildings in Hong Kong. So you're actually trying to filter or adopt this sifting process before candidates would be allowed to be voted upon by electors in Hong Kong. So would it still in line with the provision that everybody is equal before the law? So how are you preventing the rigging process of the tendering exercises of buildings appearing or emerging in the nominating committee? Secretary, Article 45 of the Basic Law provides that in electing the chief executive by universal suffrage, we have to set up a broadly representative nominating committee to enable voters to elect the chief executive by one man, one vote. This is the only place where the candidates can be nominated. That's very clearly spelled out in the Constitution of mini Constitution of Hong Kong. That's Article 45 of the Basic Law. With regard to the equal rights as referred to by Ms. Sito, in fact, if you read the Basic Law, often a time we would be referring to Article 45, but then before Article 45, we also have Article 44, which spells out very clearly as to who can stand in the election. Allow me to read that out again. Article 44 of the Basic Law reads as follows. The Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region shall be a Chinese citizen of not less than 40 years of age, who is a permanent resident of the region, with no right of abode in any foreign country, and has ordinarily resided in Hong Kong for a continuous period of not less than 20 years. In other words, Mr. President, as far as Hong Kong is concerned, so long as you can meet the 3 requirements, you can you can run for the election and stand as a candidate so long as you are over 40 years of age and you are a permanent resident with no right of abode in a foreign country and you've resided in Hong Kong for no less than 20 years. So long as you can meet the requirements, you can stand in the election on an equal footing with others. As to the nominating right and how we can enhance the transparency of the process and how we can increase the competitiveness of the election, well, that's precisely what the NPCSC framework is about. And therefore, in the second round of consultation, we'd like to work that out with members so that we can foster a consensus in order to implement universal suffrage for the chief executive as scheduled. Your question has not been answered. Yes, Mr. President, the Secretary just referred to the eligibility of the candidates under Article 44. But then what about the members of the nominating committee, their right to nominate, and compared to other ordinary citizens who do not have the power to nominate? So would that be able to realize the provision that everybody should be equal before the law? Well, the nominating committee is broadly representative. In fact, it comprises 38 sectors representing different quarters in a community, and that would also cover the business sector, professionals, and grassroots, and also the political sector. So it's a broadly representative nominating committee. Mr. President, but then it's that equal. Secretary, do you have anything to add? No. Secretary, do you have anything to add? No, nothing. Mr. Lee? Mr. President, democracy is something that we all aspire for in our civilization, but then with regard to the history, culture, and circumstances, different places would devise their own electoral system in order to implement democracy or to realize democracy, and therefore there is no single system that applies or suits everybody or every country. And even if you refer to Article 25 of the Covenant, in fact, we are not referring to one single mode of election. Well, with regard to voting rights, yes, it's one man, one vote. But then for nominating rights, different places have different systems, and I believe that both UK and US fulfill the requirement. And then in the UK, the nominating right for the Prime Minister would rest in the hands of political parties, but then in the hand of the party whip. And then in the US, they have the electorate which will elect the presidential candidates. So with regard to the candidates fighting for the nomination by the nominating committee, that's the system in Hong Kong. I do not see how it breaches the ICCPR. Can you ask your question? So I'd like to ask if the Secretary agrees with what I said and also my observation. Secretary? President, I agree. And indeed, I can also supplement. One point. Members, please remain silent. Back in 1994, in the human rights and election methods and so on, and the means to achieving elections, well, and I read, with regard to the standards and nature, it can be very broad, and therefore there can be different systems that can implement this. And therefore, in terms of these elections, the UN will be willing to offer assistance, and it is not trying to impose any specific mode on any particular place or jurisdiction. That's on the basis of our view that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to this. I think we have already spent 22 minutes, 45 seconds on this. Moving on.
Third question, Mr. Wong Yuk-man. Mr. President, regarding the appointment members of the Independent Police Complaints Council and Minimum Wage Commission, will the government inform this council, of the basis and reasons for authorities giving only a simple account of the justifications of appointing the chairman, but not any justifications for appointing the other members of the aforesaid Council and Commission in the press releases announcing its appointments? 2. when the authorities were considering whether or not to reappoint individual members or aforesaid council and committees, which government departments responsible for evaluating the past performance of members concerned in the council and commission, and of the specific indicators based on which they conducted certain evaluations, and see whether the authorities will make public the candidates who had been considered but were eventually not appointed to the aforesaid council and commission if they were not of reasons that. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. The Independent Police Complaints Council, IPCC, in short, is statutory body set up under the Independent Police Complaints Council Ordinance, IPCCO, Chap 604 of the laws of Hong Kong, comprising members from different sectors of the community. The IPCC's main responsibility is to monitor and review the handling and investigation of reportable complaints by the complaints against police office or capital in short, and at the same time make recommendations on the handling and investigation of such complaints, as well as police practices and procedures that have led to or might lead to reportable complaints. As regards the Minimum Wage Commission, MWC in short, it is a statutory body established under the Minimum Wage Ordinance, Cap 608, comprising a chairperson and not more than 12 members drawn from the labour sector, business sector, and academia and the government. Its main function is to report to the Chief Executive in Council its recommendation on statutory minimum wage rate. My reply to the questions raised by Ms. Wong Yuk-man is as follows. 1 and 2. The government has all along made appointments of non-official members to advisory and statutory bodies, ASBs in short, on basis of merit of individual concerned. When appointing a member to serve on an ASB, the relevant bureau or department takes into account the candidate's ability, expertise, experience, integrity, and commitment to public service, with due regard to the functions and nature of business of the ASB, as well as the relevant statutory provisions of the statutory body. Appointment of IPCC members is made under the IPCCO, and the composition of the IPCC is stipulated in Section 5. As laid down in that section, the IPCC consists of a chairman, 3 vice-chairmen, and not less than 8 other members appointed by the CE. It is also stipulated in Section 5 that neither a person who holds an office of emolument, whether permanent or temporary, in a government bureau or department, nor a person who was a member of the police force is eligible for appointment. As for the MWC, appointment of members is made in accordance with the provisions of MWO. According to Section 11 of MWO, MWC consists of not more than 3 members having knowledge or experience relating to the labour sector, not more than 3 members having knowledge or experience relating to the business sector, not more than 3 members having knowledge or experience in a relevant academic field, and not more than 3 other members who are public officers. The Security Bureau is responsible for the coordinating appointment of members of IPCC, whereas the Labour and Welfare Bureau and Labour Department coordinate appointments to MWC. In appointing members to IPCC and MWC, the government has acted in accordance with the requirements of IPCCO and MWO, respectively, observed the principle of appointment on the basis of the merit of individuals concerned, and made reference to the relevant government guidelines on appointing non-official members to ASBs. The press releases on appointment to IPCC and MWC provide appropriate information in line with the general practice of issuing relevant press releases on ASBs of the government. As for Part C, the government has appointed suitable persons to serve as members of IPCC and MWC to meet their needs. Whether a candidate would eventually be appointed is subject to various factors. In accordance with the government's established practice applicable to appointment to ASBs, information relating to any candidate who is not appointed will not be made public. In respect of the appointments to ASBs by the government, we are of the view that it is not appropriate to make public information on these individual candidates who have been considered but not appointed, as this may not only involve privacy of and bring embarrassment to persons concerned, but also add to the difficulties of government in encouraging members of the public to join ASBs. Thank you. Mr. Wong Yuk-man. Mr. Chairman, if you look at his reply, you know that he has just said nothing. My question is just very simple, Mr. President. You are working in a black box. There is no transparency at all. All the appointments are not transparent. We only see the name list, and then the news release is just in 200 or 300 words, and you don't know the background. I don't know them. Apart from LegCo members, say in the IPCC, who are they? You say it's on a merit basis, but what is the basis of merit? Who have the merit? Answered my last question. You say you cannot disclose information because of privacy, but they are members of statutory bodies. Announcing why they are not appointed or announcing why they are not reappointed is not a privacy issue. There is no transparency. It's not on a merit basis. If it is appointed, it's just making people lackeys. I don't agree with him. I'm not happy with his answer. Matthew Cheung, concerning those he appointed to the MWC, will only make the increase of MWC minimum wage very slow. That's dereliction of duty. Ask Matthew Cheung not to make recommendations on appointment of membership to the MWC. I think this is an opinion and not a question. It is an opinion. My view is that there is no transparency. It's operation in a black box, and the setting of minimum wage is too low and make the wage earners suffer. Should he resign? Should he not resign? Mr. Matthew Cheung, would you respond to Mr. Wong's question? I thank Mr. Wong for his opinion. Mr. Wong Yuk-man, please sit down. I thank Mr. Wong for his opinion. As you all know, the MWC has made achievements from $28 to $30, and recently there is a recommendation. And with the approval of the executive senior executive, there will be an increase. And in fact, the MWC has made a lot of contributions. I'd like to thank all the members for their contributions, and they are there for all eyes to see. Ms. Helena Wong, I'm a member of the IPCC. I have to declare interest, but I do want to ask this. The chairman and vice chairman and all members of the IPCC are appointed on the basis of a list drafted by the Security Bureau and appointed by the CE himself. If the CE is elected by universal suffrage, then there is better safeguard. There will be more integrity. But the CE is only elected by a small circle. It is likely that the NPCC delegate is appointed, the CPCC delegate is appointed to the chairman, and the members are fans of C.Y. Leung. Please ask your question concerning independence and impartiality. Well, the only safeguard is that you were a member of the police force, or you have members who are the police force. Members of the family members who are members of the police force, then you will not be appointed. But you also have a condition that probably they will have to support the police. So what's the question? Shouldn't the administration compare the appointment arrangement between Hong Kong and overseas countries with regard to similar appointment or to similar bodies? Will there be any mechanism to introduce say judges or members of the judiciary into the IPCC, or there should be elected LegCo members, or there should be people elected from the public to be members of the IPCC. I just want to ask the administration whether there's room for amending the IPCCO to make sure that the system is impartial, is truly impartial and independent. And would the administration consider making such a study? Now, please think through your question and ask your question with precise language. Who has answered the question? The Secretary for Security. Thank you, Mr. President. With regard to the membership of the IPCC, they come from different sectors. quite a large number of lawyers, includes representatives from the medical, the education, the business sector, and there are 5 legislative members who are IPCC members. That is an IPCC secretariat which works under the law. That is an established system. After the IPCC has had its meeting, it will meet the media and brief the members of public on the outcome of discussion of the IPCC on matters of common concern. Its independence, impartiality of high quality are adequate. As for the appointment of the chairman, and she has appointed a word on the certain term. I think the term to describe the chairman is unfair. If she said that the administration appoint fans of C.Y. Leung to take up public office, that was unfair. Now, these people are committed to serve the public. They devote their own time and effort to take up public office. Her comment would only cause adverse impacts. As for the membership of the IPCC, members come from different sectors of the community. We think the system is reasonable, and the system is not just established today. The IPCC is a statutory body. Before that, there was the Police Complaints Committee. The system has been there for a very long time. It's not built in one day. There has been a long time of operation and evolution. I do not believe that the appointment is unfair. I don't believe there is any need, like other ASBs, to change. Mr. Kenneth Leung, Chairman. Mr. President, just now the Secretary said that the appointment is well established and effective, and members from many sectors, they are lawyers and doctors. But I think the membership shouldn't just be looked at from the angle of their trades and professions. I just want to ask whether people from different spectrum of the different people from the spectrum of different political affiliations will be appointed to the IPCC. I think the fact speaks for itself. Within the IPCC, there are members coming from different backgrounds. Say, for example, said by Mr. Leung, they come from different parts of the spectrum, political spectrum. Ms. Ellen Leung. The IPCC, or the Police Complaints Council in the past, is an important institution. It is an arbitrator between the government, the police, and the public. Since the establishment of the IPCC, the first 4 terms of the chairman are senior lawyers, senior counsels, Mr. Dennis Chang, Mr. Robert Tang, Mr. Ronnie Wong, and then Mr. Chat Siu Tong. Why the 5th term of the chairman is not a senior counsel? As was the administration rejected? Did the administration try to seek anybody from among the senior counsel to be chairman? Well, if you look at the IPCC, it's a rather narrow view. The predecessor is the Police Complaints Council. The first chairman was a former Executive Council member, and then Vice Chancellor or President of university, and people of high standing in the community. And in the 4 previous chairmen were senior counsels. Now, in fact, the chairman of the present IPCC is a very senior solicitor, and he has other important public offices. The appointment is on according to the principles set out by Mr. Chung earlier. Should only senior counsels be appointed to the chairmanship? There is no such requirement in the law. In making our appointment, if we take into account things not prescribed in the law and put us in a straitjacket, then the outcome will be too narrow. Mr. Leung, which part of the question is not answered? My question is not answered. Did they ask any senior counsel to be the chairman, and was that invitation rejected? In fact, he is wrong. There were only 4 chairmen of the IPCC, and there were none of them was a university professor. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Who have we considered? I think in part 3 of the answer, Mr. Chung has already pointed out very clearly that we will not make that public. Let me explain. Once again, we believe that this would only this may involve privacy that may bring embarrassment to the persons concerned. It may also add to the difficulties of government encouraging members of the public to join ASBs. Therefore, we believe that it's appropriate not to make the information public. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Mr. Chairman, in the reply by the Director of Bureau, in appointing the persons, many factors to be considered. 2 members said that in considering members, you would only consider pro-government people and fans of C.Y. Leung. And Mr. Kenneth Leung asked whether people of in different parts of the political spectrum would be appointed. Mr. Leung and Ms. Wong are lying. They are distorting the fact. Mr. Leung, please keep quiet. Please keep quiet. Please keep quiet. Two members, please sit down. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. This is a question time, not a time for debate. In your question, if you make certain criticism against other members, I think that's unfair. You should withdraw your comments on the 2 other members. You should withdraw that. Please do not speak too much on your own personal opinion in asking questions. You should ask your question point blank. Mr. Chairman, just now, I just expressed a fact. Now, speaker is not coming through. This is not a debate, members. Now, the member has raised a point of order. Concerning the point of order, it's for me to rule on the point of order. Mr. Chen Kam-lam, please refrain from engaging in a debate. I've already said that when you ask questions, you should not make comments on other members. You should not give any personal opinion to comment on the other members. To be fair, if you do so, then I will have to allow other members to respond to your comment. What you've said is not, with regard to the comment on members, is not the fact. You may think this is a fact, but that constitutes a comment on other members. I order you to retract your comment on the 2 other members. Chairman. Yes. If it is a comment, if it is unfair, I retract that. But I have to explain. Please ask your question direct. I have to explain and ask the Secretary for Security. When members accuse you in appointing members of IPCC, you only appoint fans of CY Leung, and you do not appoint people to of different political opinions to the IPCC. Is it a fact? Has the administration been framed? When members ask such questions, are they fair? Is it a fact? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, President. The Secretary for Security. To answer Mr. Chan's question, I think members should look at the membership of a list of the IPCC and try to think and understand and assess who these people are and what positions they have and what political inclination they have, and then you know the answer. Thank you, President. Can he be more certain in reading out the membership list so that everybody knows? Chairman. Now the chairman of the IPCC is Mr. Larry Kwok. There are 3 vice chairmen, Mr. Lam Tai Fai, Mr. Abraham Sheikh, Mr. Chen Kin Po. The members are, would members keep quiet? Members are Mr. Lawrence Ma, Mr. Tung-kwok Lau, Mr. Eric Chang, Ms. Christine Fang, Mr. Ip Ching Hing, Ms. Lau Yok Kyun, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Dr. Ma Hok Ka, Ms. Wong Hang Yi, Dr. Helena Wong, Ms. Mary Teresa Wong, Ms. Adrian Yip, Mr. Edwin Chang, Mr. John Yan, Mr. Eugene Chan, Dr. Vincent Low, Mr. Arthur Look, Ms. Lisa Lau, and Ms. So Lai Chan. I ask members not to yell in your seat. When other members or officials are speaking, please remain silent. Mr. Paul Chen, according to my understanding, whether it's IPCC or other member or other ASBs, there is a 6-year, 6-committee rule. I just want to understand whether this appointment principle is applicable to 2 members, to the membership of the 2 committees, and will there be any proportion in terms of appointing new blood to the committees? Concerning the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, the 6 rule will be complied with generally. There will only be extraordinary. The departure is just extraordinary, or under extraordinary situation. Only there are more than 3,900 members and only 300, or rather, only 2 members are appointed to 7 committees. Now we have replacements. We inject new blood into the committees. We try to find suitable persons into the committees so that the views can represent a wider spectrum of the community. Is there a rough proportion in terms of new blood? I think that's a new question. I did ask the question. There is no hard and fast rule. We have to look at the actual circumstances. Say when we are discussing a certain particular issue, a big project which is under study, it may be difficult to replace members in the midstream. But the 6 times 6 rule still prevails. We have all spent more than 23 minutes.
Mr. Dennis Kwok, question 4. President. At present, Dongjiang water is the main source of fresh water for Hong Kong, meeting around 70 to 80% of the total water consumption in Hong Kong. Yet there are uncertainties in the supply of Dongjiang River or Dongjiang water
which include droughts occurring from time to time in some mainland provinces as a result of global climate change, the significant increase in demand for water resources on the mainland in recent years, as well as the potential impact of urban development in cities along the river on the quality of the water. Meanwhile, the current agreement for the supply of Dongjiang River water is due to expire at the end of the year, and the government has reached another agreement with the Guangdong authorities for the supply of Dongjiang water in the next 3 years. The new agreement will continue to adopt the package deal lump sum approach in the calculation of water price. In other words, a fixed amount of annual lump sum payment will be made to the Guangdong side for the supply of an annual agreed quantity of Dongjiang water to Hong Kong. The annual increase in water price under the new agreement will be around 6%, and the lump sum to be paid over the 3-year period will amount to $13.49 billion. In this connection, will government inform this council of the unit price of Dongjiang water imported to Hong Kong in the past 2 years, as well as the unit price of Dongjiang water under the scenario of the quantity of water imported reaching the annual supply ceiling, whether it is assessed if the water price calculated according to the package deal lump sum approach can be reduced with a lower annual supply ceiling if the assessment outcome is in the affirmative of the government's reasons for maintaining the annual supply ceiling in the new agreement at 820 million cubic meters. If such an assessment has not been conducted, the reasons for that. And B, in addition to the several seawater flushing systems under construction and a desalination plant at Chung Kwan O, which is expected to commence operation in 2020, of the details of the other projects on water resources under study by the authorities. And 3, as the Secretary for Development has advised that the authorities had studied various options, such as expanding the reservoirs and interconnecting them, and the results showed that these options were not cost-effective, as the cost involved would far exceed that of collecting rainwater and purchasing Dongjiang water at present. Whether the government can provide information on the relevant studies, including the names of the reservoir study, the scope and estimated cost of the works projects, as well as the government departments responsible for these studies. Thank you. Now, for those who are watching the live broadcast of the proceedings, I want to clarify that, in fact, Mr. Dennis Kwok was referring to several seawater flushing systems under construction, not several desalination plants under construction. Secretary for Development, President. The natural freshwater resources in Hong Kong mainly come from rainfall, but the yield collected from local catchment is inadequate to meet our needs. The rainfall is also unstable. Dongjiang water, which now provides about 70 to 80% of our freshwater supply, is able to fill the gap arising from the inadequate local yield. Therefore, a reliable and stable Dongjiang water supply arrangement is essential to Hong Kong. The Guangdong authorities promulgated a water resources distribution plan in the Dongjiang River Basin of Guangdong Province in 2008. Setting out the maximum amount of water that Shenzhen, respective cities in the Guangdong province and Hong Kong can draw from Dongjiang. Another plan, the annual quantity of Dongjiang water available for abstraction for water supply is 10.7 billion cubic meters. Hong Kong has been allocated an ultimate annual supply quantity of 1.1 billion cubic meters. Taking into account the slower pace of growth of freshwater demand in Hong Kong, the annual supply ceiling in the current Dongjiang water supply agreement is 820 million cubic meters. The Guangdong authorities regulate the flow of Dongjiang by coordinating the flow control of the 3 major reservoirs of Dongjiang and maintain a stable supply of water to Hong Kong. The Guangdong authorities have been attaching great importance to the protection of Dongjiang water. It has implemented a series of measures on prevention and control of water pollution to ensure that the quality of the water supply to Hong Kong complies with Type 2 waters in the environmental quality standards for surface water, which is the highest national standard for surface water applicable for the abstraction for human consumption. And according to our water quality monitoring data, the quality of Dongjiang water supply to Hong Kong has met the standard. To meet the challenges arising from climate changes and competing demands for water resources in the Pearl River Delta region, we promulgated the Total Water Management Strategy in 2008. The strategy seeks to manage the water demand and water supply in order to achieve an optimal balance in the supply and demand of water resources to support the sustainable development of Hong Kong. My reply to the 3 parts of the question raised by Mr. Kwok is as follows. A. We have adopted the package deal lump sum approach in the Dongjiang Water Supply Agreement since 2006. Under this approach, we make a fixed annual lump sum payment to the Guangdong side in return for a guaranteed annual water supply up to the ceiling in the agreements. The actual quantity of Dongjiang water imported can also be flexibly adjusted in accordance with the local yield of the year to meet our needs. Under this approach, Hong Kong is assured of an adequate fresh water supply even under drought conditions with a return period of 1 in 100 years. We can avoid importing Dongjiang water more than necessary in years of high yield, thereby avoiding waste of water resources and saving pumping costs. Therefore, unit water price is not applicable under this approach. The WSD carries out detailed analysis based on freshwater demand forecasts and estimates the annual supply ceiling during the agreement periods for 99% reliability of water supply. Since the promulgation of the TWM strategy in 2008, we have been implementing various water demand management initiatives to contain the growth of freshwater demand and reduce water loss. The annual supply ceiling of Dongjiang water has therefore been maintained at 820 million cubic meters since 2006. If the annual supply ceiling is lowered, Hong Kong will be exposed to a risk of inadequate water supply in the event of drought. In fact, over the past 8 years when the package deal lump sum approach was adopted, Hong Kong needed to import Dongjiang water up to the ceiling in 2011 as the rainfall in that year fell short of the normal level by 40%. If the annual supply ceiling had been lowered to less than 820 million cubic meters, Hong Kong might have experienced inadequate freshwater supply in 2011 and might have needed to impose water rationing, which would have seriously affected people's livelihood and the economy. B. Apart from expanding the seawater flushing system and studying the construction of the desalination plant, the WSD also plans to provide reclaimed water in Northeast MT. The department will also promote grey water reuse and rainwater harvesting. As it is far from the seashore, North MT mainly uses fresh water for flushing. To support the developments in Northeast MT, the capacity and treatment level of the Shek Wu Hoi sewage treatment works will be upgraded. WSD plans to convert the tertiary treated effluent from the treatment works into reclaimed water for supply to the Northeast MT new development areas, Sheungshui and Fanling, for flushing and non-potable uses. It is anticipated that reclaimed water will be supplied to the residents of Sheungshui and Fanling by 2022. In addition, the WSD is also formulating guidelines on introducing facilities for grey water reuse and rainwater harvesting in appropriate new government projects. We will also encourage developers to adopt such facilities. C. The Secretary for Development remarked in his blog article entitled Water Management Strategy Response to Climate Change that the administration had considered various options, including expanding the reservoirs and interconnecting them with a view to minimizing the annual or the amount of overflow from the reservoirs. The assessments, however, show that such options were not cost-effective as the investment and operational costs to further reduce overflow would far exceed the cost of collecting rainwater or the purchase cost of Dongjiang water. The overflow from local reservoirs has been significantly reduced since the adoption of the package deal lump sum approach in 2006. At the moment, overflow only occurs in small and medium-sized reservoirs. Their scope for expansion is limited by the terrains. Indeed, any expansion may affect the surrounding environment, the ecology, and nearby facilities. The dams and water supply facilities of some of these reservoirs have also been designated declared monuments. With regard to the option of interconnecting the reservoirs, it would entail works of a very large scale and high cost as they are very far from large reservoirs. According to the rough estimates of WSD, the unit cost for expanding or interconnecting reservoirs to reduce overflow would be over $20 per cubic meter, far exceeding the current cost of collecting rainwater or even the purchase cost of Dongjiang water. It should be noted that the estimates haven't taken into account the cost for implementing necessary measures to mitigate the environmental impact of the works and reprovisioning of affected infrastructure. Increasing local water storage will require increasing the area of the local catchment and expanding reservoirs. At present, the local catchment measures 300 square kilometers, accounting for about 30% of the total area of Hong Kong. There is a serious shortage of developable land in Hong Kong. Besides, developments within the catchment are subject to stringent restrictions. In consideration of land resources and the impact on the environment and nearby facilities, it is not viable to identify suitable land in Hong Kong for expanding the catchment or constructing large new reservoirs. Mr. Dennis Kwok. President, thank you. I have raised this question because water resources in the mainland are inadequate, and there is a problem of water pollution. And concerning seawater desalination, I don't think the Bureau has given a detailed reply. I understand that there is a desalination plant planned in Tseung Kwan O, and will the administration consider constructing more such plants for supplying water to Hong Kong people? Secretary, thank you, President. I hope that members will understand that concerning seawater desalination, the cost is high and a lot of energy has to be consumed. And because of the large amounts of electricity consumed, there will be environmental impacts. And so the use of Dongjiang River is the most cost-effective option. In fact, in 2012, the WSD started planning for the construction of a seawater desalination plant in Tseung Kwan O. And in 2015, the detailed planning and investigation studies and the environmental impact study will be completed. Initially, 15 million cubic meters of water can be provided per year, and this quantity will be increased to 100 million in the years to come. That would mean about 5 to 10% of total water consumption in Hong Kong. Mr. James Tian. Thank you, President. So we can see that although Hong Kong enjoys a high degree of autonomy, there are issues that we can't resolve on our own. For example, water supply, and we have to have discussions and coordination with the Guangdong authorities. Now, in the reply, it is pointed out that in 2008, the water resources distribution plan in the Dongjiang River Basin of Guangdong Province was promulgated, and it was said that Hong Kong would be allocated an ultimate annual supply quantity of 1.1 billion cubic meters. I want to know why is it that we have to sign agreements once every 3 years? Can we have guaranteed water supply up to 2047? Although you may increase or include a provision allowing for an increase in the rate once every 3 years, for example, because Hong Kong people need to be guaranteed an annual supply of 820 million cubic meters of water. So if we can get this guarantee, then we not be too worried about whether we can build more desalination plants in Hong Kong, for example. Secretary. Thank you, President. In 2008, the Water Resources Distribution Plan was promulgated. It is an agreement representing long-term planning. And under this agreement, Hong Kong can be allocated an ultimate annual supply quantity of 1.1 billion cubic meters. And we think 3 years represents a reasonable period to review and adjust the rates. Can you repeat the part of the question that has not been answered? Yes, President. Is the agreement a 3-year agreement, or is it that it is valid till 2047? It is only that the rates will have to be adjusted once every 3 years. Secretary, can you clarify? The 1.1 billion cubic meters is the ultimate annual supply. This is a long-term agreement. And then concerning the water supply agreement, is a 3-year agreement on the detailed arrangements as well as the rates. Dr. Kenneth Chan. President, the Undersecretary has told us that the supply of Dongjiang River is very reliable and cost-effective, and so we can have the water supply agreement repeated once every 3 years, and we need not be worried. Now, my question for the Undersecretary is this. In the event that Guangdong can't supply 1.1 billion cubic meters of water to us in a year, and in the event that there are natural disasters or unpredictable conditions, and as a result we can't get 1.1 billion cubic meters of water supply annually from Guangdong. What can the government do to satisfy the demand in Hong Kong? Secretary, at the moment, supply from Dongjiang represents 70 to 80% of our local consumption, and for the rest, we depend on the yield collected from local catchment. Now, of course, we need to manage our demand. We have to control the growth in the demand for fresh water locally, and then we are looking at other options. Desalination. Seawater desalination is one option that we have studied. So this can help us cope with the situation when there is a drought, and seawater desalination can supply up to 10% of our local consumption. Other options being explored are the provision of reclaimed water, grey water reuse, and also rainwater harvesting. Now, President, I think the Undersecretary has been reading from his speech. But then, what if we can't get the supply promised to us by Guangdong? Is it that water rationing will be implemented immediately? Are there any contingency plans on the part of the administration? Secretary? Thank you, President. I understand Mr. Chan's concerns. At the moment, we import Dongjiang water and send the water to our treatment plants for treatment. But at the same time, we have our reservoirs serving as a buffer. And then if the situation deteriorates, then we may have to rely more heavily on seawater desalination. So our reservoirs can help us deal with, say, short-term drought conditions. Mr. Michael Tian. President, thank you. Concerning this package deal lump sum approach, I find it unacceptable. In the past 10 years, there were 2 years in which we wasted 200 million cubic meters of water. And that would mean wasting $1 billion per year. And then in 5 years, we wasted 100 million cubic meters. In other words, $500 million per year wasted. So in other words, 500 million times 5, and then 1 billion times 2. That would mean we have wasted a total of $4.5 billion on water that has not been drawn. So how come you can't negotiate with Guangdong to lower the amount or the quantity to 600 million cubic meters? So you shouldn't pay $5. You can offer to pay $7, and it will still be wise. If you lower the quantity of supply under the package deal lump sum approach. In fact, this is the way we do business. You know, we wasted $4.5 billion in the past decade using this present approach and this present maximum supply. Secretary, now in fact I've already said that there are merits in adopting the package deal lump sum approach. Mr. Tian said that in the past decade, we wasted a lot of money. Now let's look at the local yield in the past 30 years. The average was 200 million. The range was from 100 million to 360 million cubic meters. And on 3 occasions, we only had 100 million cubic meters of local yield. And so the waters or the maximum quantity of 820 million cubic meters is reasonable. And in fact, droughts are occurring more frequently and lasting for longer periods of time. That's why we think 820 million cubic meters is a suitable level. In fact, the 3 droughts occurred over the past 15 years. In other words, 3 years out of 15 years. So, in order to cope with challenges brought about by climate change, we are now building a desalination plant. And if there is adequate rainfall, we will make less use of the desalination plant. And then with regard to the annual supply cap, if we had lowered the 820 million cubic meter level, we would have suffered from a shortage of water supply in 2011. Yesterday, your question has not been answered. I'm not asking him to lower the cap to 600 million cubic meters. I'm saying that for the amount above 600 million cubic meters, a higher rate can be offered. That would still be wise. Have you considered this option, Secretary? We haven't discussed this option with the Guangdong authorities, President, because we need reliability of water supply. And that's why we've agreed on 820 million cubic meters. But of course, this idea can be considered in the future. Mr. Ho, President, I think the government is really too complacent concerning the securing of water supply. Now, concerning our local catchment, it measures 300 square kilometers. I understand that, in fact, there were water storage tanks under the ground in Happy Valley, and then there are some stormwater collecting drains in the mid-levels, and the 2 projects, in fact, cost billions of dollars. But I understand that those are for preventing flooding. So we've spent tens of billions of dollars on these projects. So how come we are not making use of the water collected by these projects? You're telling us that the cost for expanding or interconnecting reservoirs to reduce overflow will be over $20 per cubic meter. You are saying that the cost of desalination is also very high per cubic meter. So why is it that you are not exploring existing the use of existing facilities, Secretary? President, we have a local catchment of 300 square kilometers. The local catchment mainly collects water upstream, cleaner water. And then for the anti-flooding drains or sewers, they mainly collect water at the midstream and the low stream level. The water is dirtier. And also, such water may also contain the dirt and also the on the roads. And so if we are if we are to make use of this option, we have to have very big storage tanks. They will not be used too often. And also, as the water is relatively dirty, there will be a lot of treatment work required. Ms. Ho mentioned the anti-flooding water storage tank in Happy Valley. And the rainwater collected is used for non-potable purposes. We've spent over 24 minutes on this question. Next one, Mr. Kwok.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the 15th of July this year, the Chief Executive, CE, made a report to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, NPCSC, on whether there is a need to amend the methods for selecting CE of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, HKSAR, in 2017, and for forming the Legislative Council, LegCo, of the HKSAR in 2016. The July 15th report, in accordance with the interpretation by NPCSC of Article 7 of Annex 1 and Article 3 of Annex 2 to the Basic Law of Hong Kong, SAR of the People's
Republic of China the interpretation. After considering the fourth set of report, NPCSC made a decision on the 31st of August on issues relating to the selection of CE by universal suffrage and the method for forming LegCo in 2016. Many members of the public have occupied roles in a number of districts since the 28th of September to fight for the selection of CE by universal suffrage in 2017. The occupation movement. On the 21st of October, government officials had dialogue with representatives of the Hong Kong Federation of Students. At the meeting, the Chief Secretary for Administration said that the SAR government would submit a public sentiment report regarding constitutional development to the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office of the State Council. In this connection, will government inform this council first of the legal and policy basis for the authority submitting the public sentiment report, whether they have assessed if such a action complies with the requirements on amending the methods for selecting C and forming LegCo settled in the interpretation. If the assessment outcome is in the affirmative of the details, what the authorities expect the submission of the public sentiment report will accomplish, including whether it will facilitate a peaceful conclusion of the occupation movement. Second, which government officials are responsible for drafting the report, when the report will be completed, how the authorities ensure that the report will fully reflect the public opinions in Hong Kong, and NPCSC will go along with the wishes of the public when making decisions on the constitutional development of Hong Kong. And third, where the CU will, in response to the public aspiration for the selection of C by universal suffrage in 2017, resubmit the July 15 report after making amendments or a supplement to it if he will, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. Mr. President, on the 15th of July 2014, the Hong Kong SAR government published the report on the public consultation on the methods for selecting the chief executive in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016 to objectively and truthfully reflect the views received from different groups and individuals from various sectors of the community during the 5-month consultation period. On the same day, the Chief Executive CE submitted his report to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress to invite the NPCSC to make a determination on whether there is a need to amend the methods for selecting the CE in 2017 and for forming the Legislative Council in 2016, and formally kick-started the 5-step process of constitutional development. On the 31st of August 2014, the NPCSC adopted the decision of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress on issues relating to the selection of the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region by universal suffrage, and on the method for forming the Legislative Council of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region in the year 2016 decision, which marks the completion of the second step of the 5-step process of constitutional development. The decision formally determines that universal suffrage for the elections through one-person, one-vote could be implemented starting from 2017. Officials from the central authorities have repeatedly reiterated that they attach great importance to the constitutional development of the Hong Kong SAR and have been keeping abreast of the opinions and sentiments of the community in Hong Kong, including the different views and opinions of different sectors of the community since the decision was adopted by the NPCSC. Our reply to the questions raised by Dr. the Honourable Kwok is as follows. First, members of the Task Force on Constitutional Development, the Task Force, including the Chief Secretary for Administration, the Secretary for Justice, and the Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, together with the Director of Chief Executive's Office and Undersecretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, had a 2-hour dialogue with representatives of the Hong Kong Federation of Students on the 21st of October 2014. At the meeting, the government indicated that, without prejudice to the provisions of the Basic Law and outside the 5-step constitutional process, we were willing to submit a public sentiments report to the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office of the State Council to objectively and truthfully reflect the aspirations and opinions regarding constitutional development expressed by different sectors of the community and the related social movements since the 31st of August. Second, the public sentiments report will be drafted and submitted in the name of the task force. We will endeavor to include the different aspirations and opinions from different sectors of the community that have been publicly expressed through various channels, including relevant opinion polls and signature campaigns conducted by different organizations. In adopting the decision on the 31st of August, the NPCSC has stated that the decision was made after having considered thoroughly the report submitted by the CE, as well as the views from different sectors of the community. Third, as mentioned above, the Hong Kong SARG will only submit one public sentiments report, which will not constitute a part of the five-step constitutional process. For the next step, the Hong Kong SAR government will conduct a second round public consultation in accordance with the decision adopted by the NPCSC on the 1st of August and submit at an appropriate juncture to the LegCo a resolution to amend Annex 1 to the Basic Law with view to securing a two-thirds majority approval of the LegCo so that the Hong Kong SAR could implement universal suffrage for the CE elections through one person, one vote in 2017. Dr. K.K. Kwok, his answer is most outrageous and disappointing. First of all, on the 15th of July, the government submitted a report. It was outrageous that it caused a public outcry. It failed to give a clear account about aspirations concerning universal suffrage for the election of the CE in 2017. And then the NPCSC determined on a fake universal suffrage. Since then, we have kicked off the umbrella movement. So if you are to prepare the public sentiments report, how are you going to address the issue about a genuine universal suffrage? First of all, you are not going to resolve the occupation movement. And when are you going to do it? And thirdly, you have even said that it is not going to affect the decision made by the NPCSC on the 1st of August, which is most disappointing. Please ask your question. My question is, for the public sentiments report to be written, what is the purpose? Are you trying to do a sloppy job, misleading the public, thinking that you are working on it, or are you genuinely and sincerely working to change the disappointing report concerning universal suffrage? Because for that one, we won't really have equal and universal suffrage to elect the CE. Secretary, first of all, I cannot agree with what Dr. K.K. Kwok has said. That is, for the report submitted to the NPCSC, we haven't been comprehensive. Well, in fact, if you care to read it, in fact, all the persons met during the consultation exercise, all the views expressed in the exercise, including members present as well as their political parties, all of them have been included in our report. Therefore, our report is a comprehensive one, and it has truthfully reflected public opinion and views. For this dialogue between the CS4A and her team, as well as the representatives of the Hong Kong Federation of Students, well, as to the events that occurred since the 31st of August, the sentiments expressed as well as the opinions expressed, as a result to our response in that dialogue, we would like to compile a report. It is a public sentiments report, and we would like to submit it to the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office of the State Council. In my main reply, I have already made it clear. Constitutional process is something very solemn and serious, and we are not going to add a particular step into the five-step process, which we will take forward gradually, step by step. As pointed out in the main reply, we have already gone through the first as well as the second steps. Now we are going to embrace the third step, and we are going to have a discussion with members, and we look forward to having a joint effort with the members. He hasn't answered your question. My question was clear. What's the purpose of having the report? Are you just trying to mark time? You're just trying to buy time? Or are you being sincere in resolving the dispute? Secretary, for your reply, does it mean that you are dismissing the report as a useful one? So you will just continue with the fake universal suffrage? Please take your seat. What's the purpose of the public sentiments report? Is it going to solve the problem? I've said that since the 31st August NPCSC decision, the public sentiments and opinions expressed will be referred to the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office so that they will be kept abreast of the situation. Ms. Chen Yun-hen, for the Occupy Central movement, so far, we have been told that a public sentiments report will be submitted by the government. That was proposed during the dialogue, but then it appears that students are not going to accept this idea. It has disappointed us to a certain degree. I hope that it is clear that the government plays a very important role. So my question is, now, Mr. Lau Kong-hwa, the Undersecretary, has said that there will be the submission of the public sentiments report. But other than that, well, in fact, in the past few days, everybody has been very concerned about the latest development. We have been reading all the news first thing in the morning. Now, both the students as well as the government, among other people in the community, would like to see an early solution to the problem. So what will be done? Please tell us. Ms. Chen, for your question, I'm afraid it isn't really that related to the main question. Can you explain? It is related. Well, for the main question, it is centered around the report, the public sentiments report to be prepared by the government. So what has it to do with your supplementary question? Yes, it is related. Recently, the CE met with the national leader in Beijing. We don't know whether there is a follow-up to the public sentiments report. So we really want to know how there will be a peaceful end to the occupation. We don't know, and that's why we'd like to ask this question. Now, I want to know what are you going to do in the next few days. Secretary, are you able to answer this question? Mr. President, I understand Ms. Chen's meaning. Just now I talked about the 5-step process of constitutional development. We'll soon take the 3rd step. Prior to that, we are going to have another round of consultation. And the target will not just be the students, but the general public, including honorable members here. Now, constitutional development is the aspiration as well as the right of many people. Therefore, in the coming 2nd round of consultation, we look forward to active participation by all. As to the public sentiments report, as I have said, it will be submitted by the Hong Kong Macau Affairs Office for their reference. Mr. President, I don't think he has answered my question. I think it is related, and it is going to be submitted to Beijing, and I'm sure you will suggest a solution to end the movement peacefully. It's attracted the attention of the entire city. Yes, you said you knew what I meant, but you haven't answered my question. Ms. Chen, I firmly believe that your question is of concern to many people, but I still believe that your supplementary question isn't quite related to the main question before us. I can understand your concern about the issue, but please understand and follow up on the issue via other channels. Mr. Yip Tin-yun. Mr. President, if I may follow up on the question asked by Dr. K.K. Kwok. He tried to find out how the report will reflect comprehensively and fully the views and sentiments of the public. It is said that the aspirations and opinions expressed by different sectors will be reflected, including the opinion polls as well as the signature campaigns. I'm really concerned after having read this paragraph because I am afraid the Secretary hasn't really told us exactly how the report will be complete. Understand that for some of the signature campaigns, we have been told that funny names have been found in the signature campaigns. So how can you be sure of that? Now, for the umbrella movement, we haven't got a single view being expressed. Well, the campaign has got a lot of content, but they haven't expressed directly their opinions to the government. Mr. Yip, please ask your question. How can you be sure that when you collect the views, you will be having an accurate and full account? And do you need the assistance of the public? Would you like to get the information from the public directly? I think it is a matter about the methodology of collecting the views. Secretary, I can appreciate the concern of Mr. Yip, but please be assured we have already accumulated some experience when we do support our report. And in fact, in July, when we submitted the report, it was a full and truthful report. Now, for the public sentiments report, it is a new one. We'll take a look of what has happened and what has been said since the 31st of August. We'll try to look at the findings of opinion surveys. For example, if Mr. Yip has any suggestions, feel free to express them to us. Mr. Yip, I think there's a very important question for the umbrella movement. What about the views expressed in the umbrella movement? Because there's a lot of information on the at the scene, and it is something of great concern to us. Secretary, anything to add? The point is noted. We'll try to collect the views as to how it will be presented. We are still in the process of collecting the information. Mr. Kwok. Thank you, Mr. President. For the public sentiments report, as well as the platform to exchange views, I think it is something between the government's representatives and the students of the Hong Kong Federation students. It arose from their dialogue. Now the government has expressed goodwill, but both have been rejected by the students. I want to know whether you will discontinue with the effort, but it appears from your main reply that you will continue with it since you're going to do it. So I would like to ask this supplementary question. Well, since the NPCSC decision, well, there has been a lot of changes to the public opinions. In particular, there is a signature campaign being initiated by a non-government organization, and they have a very vigorous process. You need to produce your ID card, and the first 4 digits of your ID card number has to be registered. They would like to restore social order. They would like to support the police. So they got 1.83 million signatures pledging support to this campaign. So my question is, in your public sentiments report, are you able to reflect this particular campaign, which is of such a large scale, so that the central authorities understand that the people of Hong Kong eagerly look forward to universal suffrage being the basis of electing our CE, so that we can restore order and we can uphold the spirit of the rule of law again? Secretary, Mr. Yip said that the idea of the public sentiments report arose from our dialogue. He was saying that it appeared that the Federation of Students does not accept this, and he would like to know whether we'll continue with the idea. Well, I just want to say that officials responsible for constitutional development has been most patient, and we would like to liaise with all sectors, including the Federation of Students. We would like to keep up with the dialogues. In our dialogue, we have been frank and we've exchanged our views, and we have promised that there will be a public sentiments report setting out the aspirations and opinions. Therefore, we will carry on with the task. As to what Mr. Yip has said, that is, since the 31st of August, in the community, there have been different ways to express the opinions and aspirations. I'm sure in our report, our public sentiments report, this will also be reflected. So I hope I can assure Mr. Yip, and for the question of implementing universal suffrage, Yes, in the society, we have got different aspirations, but we do share a common goal. That is, we like to elect the CE on the basis of one man, one vote. Mr. Zhang, you raised your hand. What is your point? I think I was the first person to press the button, so it isn't yet my turn. You have asked 5 times before. Before the time is up, would I get a chance? There are 11 members before you. 4 of them have only asked 3 times, and 6 have only asked 4 times. They are still waiting before you. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen. Well, Mr. Lau said that the government was very sincere, and then Mr. Yip said that the government has shown 2 signs of goodwill, but I think the government has been deceiving us. I think the first report issued on the 15th of July, it was already a deceptive report. Please ask a question. I have to set the background. They have always been deceiving us. So for the public sentiments report, it will just be the same. First of all, we got the 15th July report. It is a distortion. And then the NPCSC imposed the restrictions. And yet the Secretary of Justice would even dare to say that it cleared the barriers. Now, I think the government is going to deceive us once again. And before we get the public sentiments report, I think we see a sneaky report. That is, C.Y. Leung gave a report to Xi Jinping telling him that Hong Kong has got sufficient powers and ability to deal with the situation. It appears that they've only got thoughts on their mind. So for the C.Y. Leung's public sentiments report, has it already been submitted? On the one hand, you promised us the public sentiments report for the Hong Kong-Macao office, and yet it seems that C.Y. Leung has already submitted another public sentiments report to Xi Jinping. So are you being sincere? Would you just use force to clear the site, and you have no sincerity in resolving the impasse? Secretary. For the public sentiments report, indeed, it will be the responsibility of the task force on constitutional development to draft. It is still underway. For the other report that Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen referred to, it's not our responsibility. Are they related? C.Y. Leung submitted a report, and then you say that there will be another one on public sentiments. He would like to know whether the 2 reports are related. Basically, they are separate. We have already spent over 22 minutes on this question. 10 members would like to ask further questions, but I think that's all the time we have for this one. So we come to the last one.
The last oral question by Mr. Tang Ka-piu. It has been reported that industrial accidents occurred incessantly at the construction sites of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge related local projects since their commencement in 2009, including cases occurring this year in which several workers died after falling into the sea and one in which several workers fell from a collapsed working platform. Some trade unions have expressed worries that the contractors may neglect industrial safety in a bid to catch up with work progress to meet the target of completing the bridge in 2016. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. In each year since 2009 of a breakdown of the number of industrial accidents relating to the bridge project by accident type, the resultant casualties, the causes and injury rate of such accidents, and how such rate compares to that of industrial accidents of the entire construction sector in Hong Kong. The respective numbers of regular and surprise inspections conducted at construction sites of the bridge project, the respective numbers and a breakdown of suspension notices and improvement notices issued, and the number of prosecutions instituted against contractors under the Factories and Industrial Undertakings Ordinance by the Labour Department or LD, and the total fines imposed on such contractors. 2 of the monitoring measures put in place by LD to ensure the safety of the medium risk and high risk processes for the bridge project, such as work at height, lifting operations, operation of heavy plant and machinery, and work at height above sea level. Whether the authorities will review the legislation governing the relevant work processes, if they will, of the timetable, if not the reasons for that. And 3, whether it knows if the current progress and costs of the bridge projects are on target, if there are delays in the bridge projects, whether contractors have required the workers to work overtime to catch up with the work's progress, if they have of the average duration of overtime work that workers, including imported labor, need to perform each week, what measures and the authorities have put in place to ensure sufficient rest time for workers so as to prevent the occurrence of industrial accidents. Secretary for Labour and Welfare, President, the related local projects of Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge include the Hong Kong boundary crossing facilities, the Hong Kong Link Road, and the Tung-kwok Link. These will be referred to as the HZMB local projects. The Hong Kong BCF, the Hong Kong LR, and the Tung-kwok Link commenced construction in 2011, 2012, and 2013, respectively. The LD has been closely monitoring the occupational safety and health performance of the projects. The LD will take immediate enforcement action if contractors are found to have breached the OSH legislation. My reply to the question raised by Mr. Tang Ka-piu is as follows. Number one, since the commencement of work on the bridge local projects in Hong Kong from 2011 up to the first half of 2014, there were 2 fatalities and 44 injuries. The breakdown by year and type of accidents is set out at Table 1. LD does not keep the accident rates of individual construction works projects. The statistics about inspections conducted and prosecution taken by LD related to the projects from their commencement to the present are set out at Table 2. Number 2. Contractors engaged in high-risk processes on construction sites, such as work at height, lifting operations, and heavy plant operation, shall, in accordance with the requirements of OSH legislation, provide and maintain safe plant and system of work, including regular inspection of working platforms and machinery, arrangement for qualified persons to undertake these activities, and provision of the necessary information, instruction, training, and supervision for workers. The LD will, through inspection and enforcement, scrutinize whether contractors have complied with these OSH requirements and from time to time launch special enforcement operations targeting high-risk processes such as work at height, lifting operations, and heavy plant operation. Through stepping up liaison with the project proponents, the LD urges contractors concerned to strengthen site safety management systems, monitoring of work safety and safety audits, etc., with a view to enhancing occupational safety. Besides, the government attaches importance all along to enhancing the safety performance of public works projects through enhancing safety management systems at public work sites, effective monitoring of contractor safety performance, and implementing a merit and demerit system, as well as organizing safety promotional activities at site in collaboration with the stakeholders of the construction industry. As regards the work safety of marine construction works, the Marine Department advises that responsible persons of such works are required by the relevant legislation regulating local vessels to provide suitable protective clothing and equipment to workers working on vessels and to ensure the provision of sufficient rescue equipment on board. Under the relevant OSH legislation, the LD requires employers to assess whether workers engaged in construction works adjacent to or over water are liable to fall with a risk of drowning and make available necessary safety equipment and rescue equipment. Besides, the MD and the LD have formulated codes of practice respectively in respect of the relevant regulations and will check the compliance of employers during inspections. The LD and other government departments concerned will continue to review from time to time the aforesaid regulatory system and enforcement mode, and will seek to further enhance the work safety of high-risk processes through issuing guidelines, updating code of practice, or revising regulations as necessary. Number 3. According to the Transport and Housing Bureau, the HZMB contains 2 parts. One is the main bridge, and the other is the link roads and boundary crossing facilities constructed by the 3 sides separately. The Highways Department is responsible for implementing the bridge-related local projects, which include the Hong Kong BCF, the Hong Kong LR, and the Tung-kwok Link. At the moment, the Hong Kong LR and the Hong Kong BCF projects are being actively implemented to match the targeted commissioning date of the main bridge. The Tuen Mun Chalap Kok link is also being implemented in full steam, with its southern connection targeted for commissioning in tandem with the main bridge. These various projects are facing different challenges during the construction stage. Contractors have adopted different methods to overcome the challenges involved. The government has been reviewing the implementation of the projects with a view to overcoming and tackling the difficulties concerned in a timely manner. According to the records provided by the contractors to the Highways Department, at the moment, workers, including imported workers, of each project are required to work overtime for about 4 hours per week on average. The contractors will ensure adequate rest time at appropriate places for their workers during their work time, including overtime. Regarding rest break arrangements for workers, employers shall, in accordance with the Occupational Safety and Health Ordinance, ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, the safety and health of their employees at work. The LD issued the Guide on Rest Breaks to put across the importance of providing employees with suitable rest breaks. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, thank you, Mr. President. It's unfortunate that after I have put in this question, there was the disclosure of the fact that the bridge might be delayed and also there would be a budget overrun. But never mind. In part 3 of the question, I have already asked whether there will be delays or whether there will be any overspending. But then it is unfortunate that Mr. Matthew Cheung is being the front of the Transport and Housing Bureau, and you have not even answered my question in the main reply. But I'm asking you again. In part 3, you have mentioned a very important figure. We thought that you were compressing the work schedule to meet the targeted commissioning time. But now you are telling us that there is overtime for just about 4 hours per week on average. That means less than 1 hour every day. I don't think that is any kind of overtime. Now, if you are not trying to catch up with the delay, then why would there be an overspending? If you can't answer the question, please talk to Mr. Anthony Cheung on behalf of the construction workers, that please do not put the blame on construction workers. In fact, I have been given some information by the TH Bureau. Allow me to supply it here. Information from the THB shows that in November 2011, the approved estimate was $34 billion. Now, there would be a budgeted overspending of about $5 billion. That was what Mr. Anthony Cheung said. This is a wage increase is just one of the reasons. It is also because the plant and machinery has also inflated in price. When all the figures are available, he will go back to the transport panel in December as soon as possible to give members an account, and an application would be made to the PWSC and the FC of this council for supplementary provision. Mr. Poon Siu Ping. Mr. President, I'm very glad that Mr. Tang Ka-piu has asked a question on accidents with regard to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge. Next week, I will be moving a motion debate on occupational safety and health here at the Council. I am also poised to ask the administration to explain the fatal accidents with regard to the bridge. And now I'd like to ask the supplementary today. Since the start of the construction of the bridge, construction workers have met up with fatalities and injuries. 4 workers died and over 40 have been injured. I'd like to ask the Secretary, now that there have been a spate of incidents and accidents attending the bridge project, have you investigated into the causes of the accidents so that we can map out concrete remedial measures to prevent recurrence of serious construction accidents at the bridge? Secretary, I welcome the supplementary and the motion debate next week. We place a lot of attention on the accidents attending the bridge project. As you know, in 2012, after it commenced for a short while, there was a big accident involving 1 fatality and 14 injuries. And if you look at Table 2, you will see that we have stepped up inspections and prosecutions. Just now you asked me whether we would investigate into the causes of the accidents and tell those to the contractors. That we will certainly do. We it might not be proper for us to divulge the exact details because there might be legal concerns because some are at the coroner's court. But basically, if there are improper work procedures, we would be able to investigate into those, and it is very easy for our advisory inspectorate to contact contractors by electronic means at real time now, and so contractors will be informed of the necessary information in real time. Ms. Chen Yunhan, first I'd like to agree with Mr. Tang Ka-piu. I think Anthony Cheung must be here together with Matthew Cheung to answer this question, because industrial safety is a problem at the bridge construction sites, and the trade unions are asking questions already, but now you are saying that there will be overspending and this is because of wage increase. You seem to be putting pressure on the workers. And in fact, some workers have asked me to lay this complaint with the government, and that is the government does not mind how contractors are tackling or handling rest breaks and also their work time. It seems workers are taking all the blame. You say you are stepping up inspections. If that's the case, why are there so many accidents? And now you say there is a wage increase, and so contractors have this as an excuse not to hire more people. So I think you have the duty here, Ms. Chen. What is your question? My question is whether the secretary should clarify that the $5 billion is not about wage increase, but it's because of the wrong estimation done by the government. Please do not just concentrate on wage increase because now contractors are saying they will not hire more workers. So, Secretary, do you agree that you need to clarify the issue? A wage increase has just jumped up by 6% over the last few years. We can show you the figures. And you, as the Labour Minister, you should tell Mr. Anthony Cheung that the $5 billion must not all be attributed to wage increase. Secretary. President, I was referring to information from the THB, and absolutely there is no intention to blame wage increase for the overspending. We were just saying that there is an increase since 2011, and wage inflation is just one of the causes. There are other causes, say, for example, construction material have become more expensive, and heavy plant and machinery, whether they are hired, used by hire or bought, again, they are being more expensive. And also we go for more environmentally friendly processes, and so they are more expensive. Mr. Anthony Cheung will revert to the transport panel next month, and he has already promised that there will be a detailed account given there. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, sorry, Ms. Chan. Well, this is what he said, all right, but he was not very exact. I hope that this secretary will also attend that meeting at the transport panel. Ms. Chen, please do not express your views. I think the secretary has already answered your question adequately. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Mr. President, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge involve a main bridge that has to be built by all the three governments, and also the other part that will be taken care of by the separate governments. Now, I'd like to talk about the main bridge. It is going to be built over the sea. What kind of industrial safety or occupational safety standards are applied to the bridge? Are they comparable to the standards adopted in Hong Kong? Secretary, maybe there is some misunderstanding. If it is built over the Hong Kong waters, we'll apply Hong Kong laws, including OSH laws. And if it is right over the sea, it is the responsibility of the Marine Department. If it is onshore or near the shore, it is our responsibility. But we cooperate with the MD, and because of the spate of accidents, we have stepped up inspections, and we have already issued a code of practice, and also to make sure that contractors have enough rescue equipment on board the vessels or at sites. I was asking about the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, main bridge, because it is outside Hong Kong waters. Now, of course, we're involved in the building of the bridge project. I was talking about the main bridge and what kind of OSH standards apply to the building of the main bridge and whether they are comparable to the OSH standards in Hong Kong. Secretary, in fact, all the three places are concerned about worker safety. Now, whether the mainland will follow all the standards in Hong Kong, we cannot make that demand, but we have communication with them. What is most important is that within our jurisdiction, we must apply Hong Kong standards and Hong Kong laws. Mr. Ng Leung Sing. Thank you, President. I'd like to refer to the second last paragraph of the main reply and the overtime issue. We are concerned about the possible budget overrun of the bridge project. I'd like to ask about the overtime, which is about 4 hours per week on average. I'd like to ask how that impacts on wages, income for the workers. Would that constitute a rise in overall wages? Do you have a ballpark figure? And since the bridge project is still going on, can you estimate for me and expect how much wage increase there will be in total finally? Secretary, thank you for the question. Every day, there are 2,100 workers working on the project on average. And if they work 4 hours per week as overtime, then you can more or less come to grips with the situation. But I need to seek a deeper understanding and get more figures before I can give you the answer. But overall, there are 2,100 workers working on the bridge project every day. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. President, in the main reply, in Table 2, the Secretary lists the number of inspections and law enforcement figures for the last few years. I can refer to 2012, 42 inspections and 6 prosecutions. And then 2014, 134 inspections and prosecutions 8 times. And then in between, 2013, 86 inspections and 66 prosecutions, meaning you take out 1 prosecution per inspection. Are the figures correct or are the figures abnormal? And if you look at the overall fines for all 3 in 2013 is $27,400. So it's just a $400 fine for each prosecution. Is that right, Mr. Secretary? Can you explain? Thank you, Mr. Low, for your keen observation. Let me explain. The figures are lagging behind the situation. In 2012, that is the crucial or crunch year, you can see there have been 6 prosecutions and 4 improvement notices have been issued. This is because in October 2012, as you know, a platform fell down and 1 was killed and 14 were injured. But then the investigation went well into 2013 and we issued 66 summonses for that case alone. That referred to the accident with 1 fatality and 14 injuries. And then the case was heard in 2014. And you can see a fine of $549,000 that applied to that single case. That fine for 66 summonses. So there is a lagging behind in the schedule because of the judicial process. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, I'm asking about occupational safety. Now, I believe there is everything to do with Guangdong. In the main reply, I am of the view that you are suppressing figures. In fact, 5 workers have died, and you should refer to Table 1 and the remark. And 3 of them had to do with work above water. I held a press conference with the General Union of Construction Workers, and we questioned the present ordinance. You say you require the contractors to provide appropriate rescue equipment. What do you mean by appropriate rescue equipment? Is it a rope or is it a buoy hung at the side of the boat? Would you also stipulate that there should be life-saving jackets for workers to wear because they may fall into the sea and they do not know how to swim? Sometimes they even work at night above water and it's very difficult for them to be rescued. Mr. Tang's fatality figures are such that 1 had nothing to do with this bridge project. It referred to another government project, so it was not about this bridge. But then I agree that we are also very concerned about the drowning at sea. And then on the 4th of December, there will be a major conference on work safety at sea. we're going to organize it together with the MD and another department. We agree that contractors may be able to provide life-saving jackets, and if there is a risk of drowning, they must provide this, and if they don't do so, the fine will be $50,000. Together with the MD, we are going to step up inspection at sea. Is it that your question has not been answered? I was asking whether you will review the ordinance, including the penalties. Secretary, we have an open mind. Should we find that even if we together work with the MD and we cannot improve the situation, we will not rule out the amendment to legislation and also updating our guidelines. Mr. Ng Liang Sing, thank you, President. The Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge is a major construction project and it has OSH implications. My question is, during the work progress of the bridge, has the government done records on site, including the various aspects of operation, so that we can have them for review and even for educational purposes? Secretary, yes, we will certainly do that. In fact, even before the start of major projects, we would already be on site to look at the entire safety system. And we want to do prevention because that is better than cure, and we want to tackle the problems at source. And whenever there are incidents, we will learn from them. And if you can look at table 2, you will see that we have increased our inspections by 50%. It goes to show that we will spare no effort in preventing industrial accidents. We have spent almost 23 minutes on this oral question, and that's all for oral questions today.
Bill will now resume the second reading debate on the